We'll start, though, with the latest national polls by the Pew Research Center out, showing Mitt Romney and Herman Cain in a dead heat with 23 and 22% support. They're followed by the surging Newt Gingrich with 16%. Ron Paul and Rick Perry are both tied for fourth with 8% support each. Anyone surprised by Newt Gingrich surging? I mean, I am, but
no, of course not. Of course not. For two reasons. He's done well in debates, and there's nowhere else to go at this point.
I think it has to do with the field, and that this is a really undistinguished field in a great way, and somebody with name recognition and a history like Gingrich and credentials with the so-called Republican base is going to come up with numbers, and now he's got to go past his record as a serial hypocrite.
Right.
And whether he can do that, he might well be able to. We'll see in the primary.
And sort of picking apart the pieces of his history this morning, because there are new reports out. Politico this morning is offering new insight into the timeline of Newt Gingrich's consulting job with Freddie Mac. According to the site, his $30,000 a month payments continued until September of 2008. That's a pretty good fee, $30,000 a month.
Well, the real thing is the way the Republicans went after the Democrats on this same question. We've got a big problem in Washington that he is a poster boy for, and that there are Democrats in the same ball game, which is this revolving door, which has produced a political oligarchy that we live in. We now have a political oligarchy in this country.
And Eugene, were you going to say something?
No, just Carl's absolutely right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then the problem with the timing of this for Gingrich is that the payments stopped when the federal government was forced to take over the lending giant during the housing crisis. The timing is worth noting, considering what Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, said in September of 2008, just about the same time, about then presidential candidate Barack Obama receiving contributions from Fannie and Freddie.
Oh.
I think Senator McCain should have turned and said, Senator Obama, are you prepared to give back all the money that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae gave to you? Are you prepared to fire your housing advisor who was paid $90 million over 6 years while helping ruin Fannie Mae? Are you prepared to fire your advisor who was the former head of Fannie Mae, Mr. Johnson? Are you prepared to disassociate yourself from Chris Dodd, who was the highest recipient of money from Fannie Mae, and who, by the way, as you know, was also getting a below-market loan from Countrywide before they went broke?
How does this happen? Mike Barnacle,
well, you know,
explain.
as he was speaking then in September of 2008, he had just cashed, clearly, according to Politico, his last check for $30,000 a month. As he was speaking, he was cashing that check. And in light of his comments after that period of time, when he indicated that Barney Frank and Chris Dodd both ought to be arrested for their relationship with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, then clearly the former Speaker, if he were to hew the straight line and stop being a hypocrite, he would today Mirandize himself and place himself under house arrest for a series of gross hypocrisy.
So that was a cry for help, in other words. Please come arrest me,
He
take me to
is
jail.
so badly in need of an intervention. You know, for someone to sit down.
I want to ask Gene and Carl, because you guys have covered politicians for a long time, and I know you're not psychologists. A guy like that, who obviously understands he's an historian, so he knows his own personal history.
That's another question.
Does he not think it's going to come out? Is he delusional? Does he think he has an answer? Do they not stick it to when these absurd things that we know are game enders? What is the psychology?
Before you get to these guys who are experts in everything that happens in Capitol Hill and has happened in Capitol Hill, I would tell you at a local level, covering politics in and around Massachusetts and sometimes on a national scale, it is stunning the number of people in public life who, when they're there for a long period of time, think they are invisible. Think they can do anything and say anything. And
well, does he not think this is going to come up? I'm just curious the psychology.
Thinks he's invisible. I think Newt Gingrich has acted so visibly that he has put forth this persona that clearly believes he can do anything.
But I'm just saying, if I said to him a week before, Newt, you got this thing. You're going on and you're saying, let's put Dodd in jail. You just cash out. What would his response be?
His response would be that doesn't matter. That's not, that, you know, he
just so I can show
megalomania.
So is that what it is?
That is common to politicians at that level. But Newt has a particularly bad case of it. I'm sorry. And he's, you know, he does think he's above it all, and that he can do it, and you know, go left and then say, no, I went right, and nobody will notice.
Let's look at the playing field and the rules of the game. This has become part of an accepted political process. You say one thing, you do another. You get caught doing this, you just come back, you go on the air, you say, you know, okay, I'm not going to do it again. Newt Gingrich said the other day, well, I guess we're going to have to look at a different way of doing things.
Okay, so this is basically, unless anybody here disagrees, brazen arrogance and making fun of the American people, basically mocking everything that this country stands for and everything that pisses people off about this country.
Right, and everything I said last week.
Stands for not only the arrogance, but the hypocrisy of people in power taking advantage of that power. So again, I repeat, he's taking money. At $30,000 a month, at the very least, we're hearing huge numbers. At the same time, I just want to replay the bite. September of 2008, talking about Barack Obama receiving contributions from Fannie and Freddie. Replay it, Alex. Replay it. This is what Newt Gingrich said.
I think Senator McCain should have turned and said, Senator Obama, are you prepared to give back all the money that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae gave to you? Are you prepared to fire your housing advisor who was paid $90 million over 6 years while helping ruin Fannie Mae? Are you prepared to fire your advisor who was the former head of Fannie Mae, Mr. Johnson? Are you prepared to disassociate yourself from Chris Dodd, who was the highest recipient of money from Fannie Mae and who, by the way, as you know, was also getting a below-market loan from Countrywide before they went broke?
I'm going to play him last night defending himself, but first let's go to the Bloomberg debate and him talking about, I think it was Barney Frank who he wants thrown in jail. Take a listen.
I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to be angry, but let's be clear who put the fix in. The fix was put in by the federal government. And if you want to put people in jail, I want to second what Michelle said. You ought to start with Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, and let's look at the politicians who created the environment, the politicians who profited from the environment, and the politicians who put this country in trouble.
Clearly you're not saying they should go to jail.
Well, in Chris Dodd's case, go back and look at the Countryside deals. So, in Barney Frank's case, go back and look at the lobbyists he was close to at Freddie Mac. All I'm saying is, so if you were everybody in the media who wants to go after the business community ought to start by going after the politicians who have been at the heart of the sickness.
This is pathological.
So last night he went to a very safe place so he could defend himself. Here he is on Fox.
My interest in housing and my interest in helping relatively poor Americans have a chance to buy a house is very real and goes back a long way. I was approached to offer strategic advice. I do no lobbying of any kind. I never have. I think a very important point I want to make. I have never done lobbying of any kind.
You know,
let's go back.
Let me give you a great analogy. I'm not being a little bit. Newt Gingrich is Kim Kardashian. Let me explain that. The American public, listen to me, this is a media insight. The American public will put up with flaws. Listen, no, I'm not being funny. They'll put up with a sex tape from her. They'll put up with Herman Cain's nonsense. You can't mock your audience. Kim Kardashian's advertisers are jumping ship. Her viewers are turned on her because you mocked me. And this is what he's doing right now. He is the Kim Kardashian of American politics.
I wish what Donnie was saying is true, but he might not win and won't win the presidency. But he is getting away with mocking us. He is up on that field and being treated as a serious candidate by the media, and he shouldn't be. Let's go back to the Clinton. Talk about it being a serial hypocrite. Let's go back to the Clinton impeachment and what was going on in Newt Gingrich's life at the same time that he was trying to have the President of the United States impeached. This is really something that we live with every day, and it's not just Newt Gingrich, and we're partly at fault because we give these guys, and women too, a pass when we put him on the air and we don't go straight to this stuff on off days before we get to this point.
Look at a couple other things he says. He has said in the past few days, oh, well, you know, $30,000 a month, that's a fairly standard fee for a former Speaker of the House. Fairly reasonable. Nothing unusual about that. And he's also said, I've never done any lobbying, as we heard in the clip, which, you know, that's ridiculous. The first is true. The second is completely false. Most of the lobbyists in Washington are not registered lobbyists. Most of the people who do what we would consider lobbying, they are lawyers. They are former members of Congress. They are former high-ranking bureaucrats who get paid essentially for the access they can provide, for the knowledge they have.
Right. Do you know that there's a group, a healthcare think tank that Newt founded that would offer a service called Access to Newt Gingrich and, quote, direct Newt interaction. I mean, seriously.
Protection.
Now let me read the story though, because that's the funny part, and I can't help myself. But the Post is reporting that this healthcare think tank that Gingrich founded collected at least $37 million since 2003 from major healthcare companies and industry groups. Promotional materials for the group, called Center for Health Transformation, offered some insurers and healthcare firms access to Newt Gingrich and direct Newt interaction, and the biggest funders were eligible to receive discounts on products and workshops from other Gingrich groups. Now, Gingrich left the healthcare think tank earlier this year to run for president. The Post asked the campaign for comment, and they referred them to the think tank, which said neither the center nor Gingrich has engaged in any formal lobbying. But aside from the lobbying questions of particular importance to the campaign may be the positions this center advocated during Gingrich's time there. The Health Center, founded by Gingrich, pushed for some policies that are central features of President Obama's health care reform law and are opposed by most conservatives.
And everything that Gingrich did, everything that Gingrich railed against when he was in the House, he went the other way when he got paid to go the other way.
It's about the money.
It's about serial hypocrisy.
You know, actually, he is, when you listen to him repeatedly in all these different clips, it's really actually kind of an interesting study into human nature, and only a psychologist could figure out, because it's a blend of arrogance, narcissism, ego, low self-esteem, because he's always parroting how he's the smartest person in the room and loves it when people say he's a history professor, he's really knowledgeable about the function of government as a historian. And at the bottom line, at the end of the day, you take all of those attributes and you put them together and you have a clown show. That's what he's become, a clown show. And I would submit that one of our guests later on, John Huntsman, has suffered as a result of our focus on Gingrich and Herman Cain and people like that.
That's the point. You know, Mika talked about he had a safe place on Fox. These candidates who are clowns have a safe place on television. Print press, what remains of it, does a pretty good job of bringing us up to date on the context of what they've done in their lives. They know they can go on to television, do the circuit in the morning, do the circuit in the evening, and the gobbledygook that they then put up there is what we see on the air, and they keep going back.
Carl,
and they're welcomed at debates.
I have more faith in the American public, and I'm going to say this again about the polls. When people say 22% for Herman Cain, that means they want the show to continue. I think in their deepest guts, they know these people are clowns, but it's a good show. And I think in this media age, we have to distinguish what are people, when they say they're voting for someone, are they voting for them because they're going to elect them, or are they voting them because I want the reality show to continue?
See, I would say we're looking at a reality show that's about a broken country because our political system is not working. And the idea that these are our candidates in one of the two major parties, and that this goes on, and it goes on in the other party sometimes too, that we can't have an election with a field of great candidates. Ask Mike. He's
I would
seen
love
this,
to see great candidates on both sides.
Have you been surprised at the numbers that the Republican debates have drawn? I mean, they've drawn pretty good numbers on TV.
Well,
Jersey Shore. Jersey Shore, very similar, like 5 million viewers.
Donnie's
it's very,
point.
you know, and
Sure.